So, testing. And then, of course, it works on mobile devices.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, so let me just double check it's streaming here. So David's in the house. Yes, we're going live. It's on my phone.
Yeah.
Which is another great thing because not everyone has computers.
Exactly. Yeah, no, when you said that, it's great.
So yeah. So our challenge is now data. Getting people to use data to get data, certainly in the African context. Cool.
Yes.
We've got Janine here, Rory, Pauline.
Hello.
Hi.
That's such a nice smile, Janine.
Isn't it? So my nicest smile today.
Cool. So, David, just to give you some context of today's class, yeah. At this time in this slot, we do our case management training.
Okay.
So people that want to come in and do case management, and that's really the creme de la creme of our training. It's you really need to have a systemic lens. You need to be able to see the whole picture. You need to be aware of managing complex cases.
Yeah.
So we kick that off next week. So we really thought that this would be a good slot to listen to you. And hello, Rory.
Oh, hi there. How's it going, David?
You've gotten wise as you kind of come out of Middle Earth with one of those Gandalf beards.
My goodness, I really wish wisdom could be grown on your chin.
Oh, all right. So it's 12 o'clock here in the UK. We start on time. So let's start with building a container, checking in, and then we'll hand over to David and see where the magic goes. I'm David. I'm checking in anxious because I'm really excited to have David here and what we're doing. And it's really nice to see fellow human beings across the planet come here. So I check in with excitement and joy. Hello, Marida. Let's tag you, Marida. Would you like to check in? Oh, by the way, I'm in London in the UK.
Hi,
Marida?
good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm checking in with Joy.
And where are you, Marida? Just so David knows.
South Africa, Johannesburg, South Africa, at the Foundation Clinic.
Yeah. And Marida's a program manager of the clinic in South Africa.
Sorry.
Yeah. Great. Who are you tagging, Marida?
Who's Pauline?
Good choice. You're muted, Pauline. Muted.
Oh, okay. Now better?
Yes.
Okay. I'm checking in, feeling good, curious what's going on today, and checking in from Holland, Sleen, from up north. Checking in, Paula, yeah.
Yes, I'm checking in with joy, curiosity, and I am in Holland, in Utrecht, and I'm taking care of outpatient program Vista Health Maoni from this side of the world, and I'm taking Janine.
Hello, everybody. I'm checking in with curiosity also, and I'm on time and I'm present and I can stay until the end, which is great. So and I have my sandwich, so I'm also having lunch. And I'm tagging Rory.
Thank you very much. I'm checking in, quite content and excited to be here. And I'm speaking to you guys from Copenhagen in Denmark.
Fabulous.
Theo?
Good afternoon. I'm Theo. I'm busy, but Paula's mentioned that there was a lecture going on, so I come in and listen. I will be probably doing some other stuff in the background, but I will get my camera off then.
Great. David, would you like to check in and then introduce yourself and tell us what you would like to get out of today?
Sure, yeah, I'd love to check in. So hi everyone, I'm David. I'm checking in from Sheffield in England in the United Kingdom, and I'm really excited. Really excited to be with you all today. I'm also kind of keen to connect with you all. I'm really kind of looking forward to not having. I was just saying to David before everyone joined, it's marking season at the university that I work at. So I've been marking 150 scripts. So I feel like I've just been locked away every day, kind of reading and I'm a people person. I love kind of interaction. So this is really much preferable and refreshing for me. So yeah, and hoping today that we kind of can just really share ideas. I'm always excited when the room is international. Just that kind of synergy and perspectives and differences that we all bring, and really looking forward to the discussion and kind of what comes from that and going with the flow of that. Yeah.
Great. So, David, just to give you some context of your audience here in the room, we've got some professionals here from the clinical medical background. We've got some professional artists here. We've got some people that are on the ground doing the work. We've got people here that are interested in developing this space in the virtual space. And we have a whole lot of students or people with lived experience that are going to be watching the recording later or streaming now. Unfortunately, this time isn't great for everyone, but I thought it would be much more important to get this through today and to go ahead with it. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and then what the lecture is going to be about?
Yeah, sure.
And then we go into it.
So, kind of job title, which I hate doing these things. But I'm an associate professor in criminology at the University of Derby in England, and I've been an academic since kind of 1998. So I did my PhD in drugs many moons ago at Sheffield University, and during that time worked for the Home Office and Cambridge University. So we're working on kind of multi-million-pound kind of research projects and really looking at drugs and crime connections for the first time in England and Wales. So my PhD was around looking at the validity of self-report amongst drug users. Do they tell the truth when you ask them what drugs they've used? But in the context of normalization. So the whole argument the government were kind of putting forward at that time is, you've got this extremely drug-involved population using drugs. And so we're aware that kind of, all of the drug policies are basically based upon that notion of asking drug users what they do, what they don't do. So I felt it was really important to kind of explore that. So since then, I've worked on various kind of projects for the Home Office, exploring lots of different types of drug cultures, from recreational kind of cultures all the way through to addiction and recovery. So research interests more recently are around recovery and also desistance from crime. So in addition to being an academic, I'm also kind of a life coach, MBTI, Myers-Briggs consultant, and Belbin team roles, interpersonal conflict mediator. So for me, really, the worlds came together because the research that I do uses a life course approach. So we look at kind of, what's happening at different stages of people's lives and I get to explore the dynamic nuances and variables that change and interact with each other over time. So I'm looking at the kind of the bigger picture, the long term, rather than a snapshot coming in as an academic doing a quick, cheap and dirty survey with people. That's not my approach. And also, really, the approach, as you'll hear in this lecture today, which is around the culture of recovery, is around how do we use creative methodologies. So we don't use surveys at all in some of the work. It's kind of photo voice, or it's kind of the submission, the creative assets that people have created themselves. So I'll share more about that as I get into the lecture, I think. Shall I share my screen, David?
Yes, I think that's a good place to stop. Woody, would you like to check in, please, if you're there? We just had Australia come in.
Oh, great.
Are you there, Woody?
Yeah.
Hello.
There we go.
Hi, everyone. Checking in. Yeah, a lot of curiosity and joy. Thanks, David and everyone. Look forward to the chat.
Fabulous.
Oh.
Thanks for
Great.
joining. Okay.
Thank you. All right, David, over to you. Would you like us to just jump in and ask questions as we go along, or would you like to go through the whole thing?
I wonder if, because there's a bit of an arc to the narrative that I'm presenting.
Okay.
So normally I'm happy for people to ask questions at any point, but I wonder if it'd be worth me telling the whole story, because otherwise I might then end up jumping around and kind of telling part of the story later on. Does that make sense? So if we could perhaps pause on the questions for now. It's only a short presentation.
Great. No,
as I said,
that's fine.
Yeah.
That's what I might do is, if I put my hand up or something, there's like some academic wording which I don't understand. Can I just kind of like, what the fuck does that mean, David?
Yeah. The only thing is, because I'm in my PowerPoint screen, I won't see it, so you'll need to just audibly say it so I can.
Okay. Okay, great. All right.
Yeah. So
cool. And while you're yep, that's great. Go for it.
Okay. So the title is The Culture of Recovery, an Antidote to Coloniality. And I think if I tell you the backstory and really why I chose this image, what I found throughout the last kind of 3-4 years of doing this work, this research, you kind of speak to people in addiction, in addiction recovery, and you ask them around, what's been going on in the different stages of their life. And what I came to understand was that actually what they're describing, this process of change over a long period of time, is that they're essentially unplugging from one kind of power system, one matrix of power and perspectives and structures and systems, and they're plugging into a new one. And really what my research has uncovered, and what I believe, is that the culture of recovery and the expression of people's recovery, their own individual pathways, which are individual, unique, personal to them, they express both individual antidotes, but also collective at the cultural level. If we look at the whole group of people in recovery and the way in which the norms, the values, the beliefs, and the behaviors, the practices that they have, that represents the way in which they live their life and lifestyle, the way in which they conduct their relationships, is for me a collective antidote to coloniality. So I want to kind of unpack how I've kind of got to that point. And really, for me, this work started quite bizarrely with my own personal reflections. So I'm going to present a little bit later on 2 projects that use creative methodologies. And these particular projects, the meetings for them were online. We've just come out of COVID. And it just so happened that these recovery project meetings were on the same day as meetings that I had within my own workplace. And what I came to understand was that it felt like I was entering completely different worlds as I was going into the recovery project meeting versus going into a meeting, say, at the university or in a non-recovery space. Hence the kind of the picture on the slide. And so it really struck me that there was a whole different power system and culture operating in these two worlds. And I began to kind of explore this notion of coloniality. Now, just very simply, in simple terms, and it's much more complicated than this, we could probably talk for 8 hours of these two definitions alone, but there isn't time. I just want to differentiate between colonialism and coloniality. So in simple terms, kind of colonialism is just refers to that historical kind of political, physical kind of occupation of geographic kind of territories by another. And whereas I think coloniality refers to something different. So that's much more about this underlying logic or the systems and structures, the rationality, the institutions that colonialism has created that ensures that that is still being reproduced today. So if you like, it's the foundations on which society and the way in which we live and structure our lives today is based. The whole Western civilization, its modernity, is still informed by coloniality and colonialism. Its way of
What
understanding
does
the world.
modernity mean? What does modernity mean?
Yeah, modernity is kind of, it's a sociological term, and it's around the modern era. What systems and structures make up the modern era? So if you think about the family unit, the way we do work, the big institutions around prison and kind of mental health and hospitals and schooling, our modernity is made up of these systems and structures. And those are informed by coloniality and its logic, its rationality, its way of
Great.
homogenization. Yeah.
Thank
And
you.
to break this down a little bit further, if you look at this matrix of power, and this is probably the most dense kind of theoretical bit of the whole thing of what I'm going to share today. But this matrix of power has 4 interconnected domains. So the first one is the control of knowledge and understanding. And here we're kind of thinking about lots of big words, epistemology, kind of how do we create knowledge? How do we know what is knowledge? And science and kind of religion and the whole kind of battle between these kind of knowledge bases really came to light with coloniality. And what it brought in was a school of thought of rationality and positivism, which said that science is the supreme form of knowledge. And here is a methodology, here is a way in which, if we follow this step-by-step scientific approach, we will get truth, we will get pure knowledge, if you like. Whereas all of these other forms of knowledge, cultural, historical, tribal forms of knowledge that's based upon, if we jump to number 4, the control of subjectivities, knowledge that you possess through your life course, through your being or your sensing or your own thinking, through your own lived experience, well, that was all nullified. It was vilified as uncivilized and kind of primitive. And so this whole civilizing process came in through positivism, that the white man is the king, and the way in which he creates knowledge is the best way, the only way. So it really homogenized that control of knowledge. But also a kind of coloniality controlled authority. So it brought in this notion of the nation state and that separation, that we are different people groups. And it really drew the lines kind of globally, that we are separate from each other. And within each location, it kind of birthed these institutions, or totalizing institutions, of the prison or the asylum back in the day, and the school. And that was a way in which through these institutions, through the rise of the professional jobs that it created, the teacher, the psychiatrist, these professions, was a way in which they could maintain this social control, and through which they could influence their positivistic kind of forms of knowledge. So classic in the drug treatment world, through positivism, you've got the whole medical model. So you've got the doctor or the person who's got the qualification, the expert, who uses their expertise with a patient, with a client. So we've got that hierarchy already, that we've got Dr. Brown meeting with the patient, and the expert is there due to their superior knowledge to assess you. So he has the power, or she has the power and the authority in this situation. And they will ask you very personal questions, and you have to give them the answers that they need. And from that information, that expert will then diagnose you, will give you a label as a result of their assessment. And on the back of that label, there'll then be an intervention or a prescription that is needed. And it's all based upon your deficit, the thing that's lacking, the problem that you're presenting, the thing that's missing, the thing that's wrong in your life. So it came from a very specific perspective. And so we can see that operating in the drugs field, and the way in which treatment is administered to the addict. And that's not a phrase that I use because of the stigmatizing language, but it's one in which the hierarchy was maintained. These labels are very purposefully chosen. And then if we move to the third one, the control of the economy, the whole rise and the creation of kind of capitalism, the kind of taking very aggressively of land appropriation, and that exploitation of people groups for the labor that it needed, was all part of this matrix of power. But I think essentially, with capitalism, which really individualizes people, it requires people to pursue the material, to go after the money, go after kind of this land of milk and honey, if you like. And so you move away from your community, from your kinship. You move away from your homeland. You move away from your kind of family and your support systems. You move away from your culture and your traditions and your rituals. And you move to where the job is, where the next promotion is. And as a result of that, it's created this sense of isolation and competition. And really, as I'll talk in a little while around the impact, the fruits of this matrix of power. And then the final one is the control of subjectivity. So what it says, and I kind of hinted at this a little bit earlier, was that your sense of self, your own sense of knowing, your own self-knowledge is inferior or worthless in light of other forms of knowledge or other actors. So the doctor can tell you what you should think, how you should feel, or overrule your own judgments of what is going on because they were the expert. And it was all kind of very systematic as a means of maintaining power and control. Does that make sense? Does anybody want to ask any questions on anything that I've said so far? Because I'm aware that was quite a lot to take in.
I'm loving it. I'm loving where you're going. I've got all sorts of things that I could say, but just quickly, addiction is a diversity issue. One thing. The war on drugs was a type of colonization that went around the world from the States of how you treat people. You jail them, they do 12-step programs, Minnesota model, things like that. And I just want that kind of connection between the two.
Fabulous. Really? Yeah, fully agree. Thank you. So here kind of what I then did was kind of, okay, if that was some of the structures and the systems and the paradigms, if you like, the approach that kind of coloniality brought in, what are some of the modern day effects? What can we see when we look across our societies? what impact is this having, what outcomes or fruits, if you like. So, as I mentioned just a moment ago around kind of capitalism and that focus on individualism, creating that sense of isolation, that fragmentation of the community, of not knowing your neighbor. And we know, at least in the UK, for example, very recently, we've just, the government has created a new role, an MP of loneliness. And that came on the back of a big national survey by the government that found that on average 9 million people are saying that they now feel very lonely or lonely very often. And we know that studies are showing that the impact of loneliness alone in terms of life expectancy has the same detrimental effect on your morbidity as smoking 15 cigarettes a day, and reduces your lifespan to the same extent as if you were obese. So this is kind of some serious impact that the structures and the way in which we're conducting our work lives are having on our life. But also, I think this notion of kind of, because we are all individuals, I was thinking the other day, I live in kind of quite a green area in Sheffield. And so, during the summer, there's about 16 houses on my street, but we'll all be there with our individual, this is an example in a way, but with our own lawnmowers, cutting our grass individually. And we've all got our hedge trimmers kind of, to kind of trim the hedges in the gardens. And there's no sense of, okay, why do we all need 16 lawnmowers and 16 hedge trimmers? Why can't we come together as a street and as a community and share resources? Because what's promoted in this culture of coloniality is this sense of being self-resourceful. Don't rely on anybody else. Be that kind of self-reliant individual. And also it's introduced that notion of competition, the whole Darwinian notion of evolution, that only the strongest and the fittest survive. And that's kind of inbred within capitalism. So we know that the people of value in society are the people who are productive. So if you're a stay-at-home mum, then again, there's that hierarchy and that assumption that you're somehow lazy and your role is not as valuable as the CEO of a multi-million pound company, for example. So, we can probably talk on this slide for an hour around kind of the impact, the negative impact that it does. But what you can see is that it completely impacts the way in which we arrange our days, our weeks, the way in which it impacts our relationships with one another, with our close loved ones, because the emphasis on being at work and kind of going for that next promotion and the demands of kind of working as a professional, that we're not there for our children because we're at work. So we miss out on the kind of the child's school performances or whatever events may be significant to them. But also because that sense of competition in the workplace, there's no sense of teamwork anymore, because it's all about, I'm the star of this team and I will outperform anybody else, and anyone who doesn't perform will be named and shamed, and we will kind of get rid of them if they're not performing. So it really doesn't kind of create a very nice or safe, holistic space for people to really occupy. So that's all the heavy theory bit done. What I'm going to talk about now is the two projects that kind of helped me to unpack some of the culture of recovery and how that is in complete contrast to the culture of coloniality. So yeah, I appreciate you can't see the individual kind of the detail of this particular interactive whiteboard. I can share the hyperlink to it with David after the lecture. So if you do want to have a look around at some of the resources firsthand, and I'm going to show some of the submissions on future slides. But essentially, I was working with people, with other academics on a National Institute of Health Research funded project. It was a European study, and we looked at recovery pathways across 4 countries: England, Scotland, Netherlands, and Belgium. And we did the usual thing of doing surveys and interviews, but partway through the study, we went back to those people who'd participated in the research and said, okay, will you, rather than being the subjects of our research, will you come and be the researchers with us? So that notion of co-production, knowledge creator alongside the academic team. So that absorbed the hierarchy. We created a very different space because I wasn't interviewing somebody or doing a survey on somebody. Instead, we were there together co-producing this project. And so what we said to them was, here's the findings. We've written the report to the funder. Probably about 5 people will read that. We'll write some journal articles. Probably about 12 people are going to read those. So a lot of what we do as academics and the knowledge that we create in drug addiction recovery, if we can get it into the right hands, if we can disperse it into the community and it can spread, it's got the power to help people progress and accelerate their own recovery journey, can save lives, so on and so forth. So we said to them, help us to translate the findings into a language, into a format, into a media that will be accessible. And so we were saying, let's create a little workbook, maybe A5. And they kind of laughed at us and said, we're not doing that. So what they created was something that was digital, something that was online, something that was interactive. And basically, we used the Recovery Capital framework. Are people familiar with the Recovery Capital?
Tell us what it is.
Okay. So in short, it's kind of for a person kind of at that point, for example, in addiction, who then decides to either to initiate that recovery journey or to sustain their recovery journey. It's around the internal and external assets and resources, capacities and abilities that they may have. And it's kind of broken down into 3 areas. So you've got personal capital, and I'll explain each one, social and community capital. So examples of personal capital could be a whole host of different things, amongst which might be your mental health, your physical health. It might be your sense of agency, your sense of hope, your sense of self-esteem, any factors relating to yourself as a person. Social capital refers to your relationships, the quality of those relationships. You may have, family and friendship and romantic relationships, but actually, are they positive? Are they kind of uplifting and encouraging, or are they violent and abusive or negative and demoralizing, for example? So these capitals can be positive and negative. And finally, you've got community capital as well, which refers to your sense of belonging in the community. Do you feel that you're accepted, that you're integrated, that you can access kind of the assets around you, the institutions, the services? Do you participate in that community? So that was the kind of the rows going across the image that you can see on the screen. And then in terms of the columns, we asked them around different stages of recovery, because we know that recovery is not the same at different time points. Someone who's starting recovery, that's the first column, versus someone in their first year, versus someone who's been in recovery 5 years or longer, or someone who's at those pivotal turning points. It's going to have different factors occurring in their life and in their recovery journey. So what they did was that they came to the meetings and they shared with us things that had worked for them in their recovery journey at those different time points, the getting started phase, early recovery, or kind of 5 years plus. Excuse me. And what we found, what they donated actually was not a PowerPoint, was not a report, but what they donated was songs, and they donated poems, and they donated spoken word, and they donated kind of graffiti art and journals and sculptures and short stories and podcasts and videos and a whole host of other stuff. And it was all completely creative, and it was not what I was anticipating at all. And so I'd begun to understand that there was a different culture, a different language, different practices occurring in the culture of recovery versus in other spaces. So that was the first project. The second one, which is now a website, pathways to recovery.co.uk, and essentially this was a photo voice project. So we worked with at the time it was 16 locations. We're currently expanding it both within nationally but also internationally. So we've had our first international submission. So if there's anyone here who would love to get involved in this project, yeah, I'd love to chat to you at a different point to see whether it might be an appropriate fit. But in short, the purpose of the project was again to take the power away from the academics, from the the experts, if you like, and hand the platform or the microphone over to the people with lived experience of recovery. And so we did some training with lots of communities in the 16 different geographic locations around photo voice, because what we wanted to do, and we asked them basically to take photographs of things that had worked in their recovery journey. It could be about anything that they wanted. And basically, we wanted to create local drug recovery geographical evidence bases. And we wanted to see that what works in one area, in one community, does it work in other communities? And what are some of the commonalities? What are some of the differences, perhaps, in what works in recovery? But importantly, it was about people in recovery being trained. So it had that capacity building element, that they were the leaders of the project. They were the researchers of the project. So they had ownership and commitment and passion for the project from the outset. As an academic, I was there to train in photo voice and to facilitate behind the scenes, but they were the leaders of this project. It was theirs. So it was a very different type of space and project. And so we kind of met together, did some training around photographing and what themes they might like to cover. And they shared with each other. So it was that kind of cross-pollination of sharing what's worked for me. Well, could that work for you? So there was that kind of community building aspect to it, the people connected, but also shared stories of hope and resources and assets. So it was strengths building as a community to come together, of sharing that what had worked for them, but also that reflecting on and seeing each other's submissions was also a powerful kind of way of presenting back. Look at the power of us as a community. So it wasn't sharing, look at what's wrong with us, that retelling of the story of why did you get into addiction. This was about, look at our life now, look at what we're doing now, look at the way in which we live now, and sharing that with others as that beacon of light and that beacon of hope. So I just thought I'd show you some submissions just to put a little bit of flesh on what some of this looked like in practice. So this here was from the first project, so that digital whiteboard that I spoke about. And this is Helen. And for her, journaling was really key to her journey. So she shared one of her videos, which when I send the link to David later, if you're interested in that, you can click on the hyperlink and watch Helen's video. But I just want to read one short paragraph from Helen's submission. Because really interesting, what I found was that the culture of recovery is a very creative community. So it's not about consumption, but creativity. And again, contrasting that to coloniality, what's promoted in today's culture is to consume. You buy your way out of whatever you need, whether that's looking good, the clothes that you wear, the personal assistant, the personal trainer that you have, the house that you live, the car that you drive. It's all about buying what you need. And actually, in the culture of recovery, it was about being creative and expressive, complete antithesis to what was expressed in the coloniality culture. So anyway, Helen said, today, I love to create. That may be just putting pen onto paper and taking it for a walk. It may be in doing a page in my journal to explore how I'm feeling and ask for clarity in something I'm not sure about. Resting my big emotions on the page gives me so much serenity and peace in my heart. I'm able to see, hear, and express myself without judgment. I've had to learn how to empower myself when that judging part of me takes over. It has been a piece of emotional work that spills over to my daily life. I say that art saved my life, and this is true. And so that was just kind of one snippet of one of the submissions. Another one, San Patriano and members of their community submitted a video, but also some photographs of their kind of weaving kind of workshops, and how weaving for the group of ladies that worked in that weaving workshop, that was a transformative space. And it really annoys me in recovery that, you know, at least in England, there's this whole approach amongst professionals who are seeking to support people in recovery, and it's like, keep them busy, get them a job and somewhere to live, and they're missing the whole point of it. They're missing the deeper kind of nuances and meanings undergirding what the activities are really about. And so this quote on the right, I'll just read from one of the participants. She says, "For me, weaving isn't just my daily job. Weaving is what has helped me to have faith in myself again. It's how I've learned to have relationships with people. It's how I've become freer to be myself. I love my job, not only because it's fascinating and creative, but I love to see how the threads turn into fabric and see how I can create something beautiful from nothing. It teaches me patience, dedication, and tenacity." And so just from that kind of quote, you know, there's so much that you could unpack there, but you can see that weaving's not about a job, okay? But actually that role that and that space and the relationships that are there have been healing to her. They've been empowering, and it's allowed her to build new relationships, to construct a new sense of self. And it's also given her a sense of meaning and purpose. So it's not about keeping her busy. It's not about giving her a job. It's about understanding that these are used for much deeper purposes, which I believe are parts of the culture and practices of the culture of recovery. And then this photograph was from the second project, the Photo Voice one. And this is a photograph of a lady called Dee, who actually lives in Sheffield. And I've only got a snapshot of the second half of the story, but just in summary, the story is about how she was in recovery, and she was going to all of these kind of, you know, support groups, and she was just like, oh my gosh, I just need to get away from people. I'm surrounded by people all the time. So she booked a holiday to go to the Alps to go skiing, but the reason for it was to get solitude and to escape people. And she thought, if I can just get to the top of the mountain, you know, I'll finally just get away from everybody. She said when she got to the, you know, the Alps, and she got to the top of this mountain, taking quite a lot of effort to get there to the top. She said, and she was so annoyed because there was a German man there with a selfie stick. And he walks up to her and he was like, you know, can I take your picture? And she was thinking, no, just leave me alone. I've come here to be alone. But she kind of politely obliges him. And as he's about to take the photograph, he says to her, do something funny. So she jumps up in the air, and that's the photograph that he'd taken of her in that moment where she jumps up. But just after he'd taken the photograph, when she lands, she slips and she falls on her bottom. And so she burst into laughing. And she just continued to laugh and laugh, and she couldn't stop. And then the laughter kind of turned to tears, because she realized that what she needed was connection, and that for her, connection was the opposite of addiction, and that how she tries now to live that every day, to be part of a connected community that is authentic and genuine. And again, that's so revealing, because most people on my street don't talk about a desire to kind of share life with each other or to connect with each other. At best, we kind of say, hi, how are you? Yeah, I'm fine, thanks. How are you? And that's the depth of the exchange. And finally, just another example, again from the Photo Voice project. This is a picture of someone who now works in recovery for Recovery Connections, and he's written a poem. He shared a poem, and I won't read it all, but really it's about this sense of growing hope. And on the left-hand side, it's all about that internal narrative that's saying you can't do it. So, in the madness of my addiction, I'd lost my way, fighting a losing battle every single day. The hurt I felt, the pain I'd caused killed me inside till I felt no more. Screaming and shouting, wanting to break free. But there's that voice again telling me you're not ready. You can't do this. You fail all the time. You'll never be nothing, so why even try? And then as you kind of flip to as the poem goes on, the narrative internally changes and this voice of hope emerges. So he continues, Adam, you could do this, please. Just one more try. I believe in you. I'll be there right by your side. Let's get the help. We'll do it together. Whatever it takes to see you get better. And then it kind of moves on, and he talks about how he's kind of overcome it, and he's now got the help and he's doing really well. And it ends with, if I can do it, so can you. My life is beautiful and I wish it for you. And again, it's kind of, we never get this knowledge by asking a survey, because what question could we ask that would elicit such rich data? But also what it's showing is one of the fundamentals of the culture of recovery is this expression of hope, but also this rawness to be open and vulnerable, to kind of share your stuff, but also your healing as well. So if, going back to conversations that I might have with neighbors on the street, if we stop for more than, hey, how are you? And I'll say, how are your children? And the children are always doing well. Everyone's doing well at school. The husband's doing well at work. They're doing well in whatever they're doing. Nobody would ever share so vulnerably of struggle. And that's a real kind of feature of the culture of recovery that contrasts very sharply with the culture and relationships of coloniality that we've been almost cultured and groomed to wear this armor that everything's always good and fine all of the time. So we see then, as I kind of, I analyzed all of the assets, all of the photographs, all of the written kind of explanations. So for every photograph on the Photo Voice website, each individual wrote a little kind of summary of what that photograph meant to them. But I also analyzed the transcripts of all of our meetings when we were talking about the projects and what we hope to achieve. I analyzed those transcripts and coded them thematically. So I had all of these kind of rich kind of forms of data, visual, written, audible, as well as you saw on the asset board, kind of all of the creative assets that were donated to that project. And what it really revealed is that the culture of recovery is it's a strengths-based community. It's predicated on community and connection and that authenticity. It's also really infused with a sense of people living with meaning and purpose. They're not just pursuing material kind of goods and gain, but their work and their life now has a meaning and purpose that aids their well-being and their quality of life. But also that sense of support for one another and giving back or paying it forward. So there's a sense of kind of, one of the quotes that came out again and again for people in recovery 5 years plus was, my life now is way better than it was, not only before when I was using drugs, but before I started using drugs. My life now is way better and beyond my wildest dreams. I couldn't have even imagined that I would be doing or living or feeling the way that I do now. I'd have relationships that I have now. So it's a completely transformative culture, which is really amazing. And so I presented two diverse and polarized kind of cultures. And it can, for those of us working in this field and have already kind of seen glimpses of some of maybe what I've shared already through your work, you have that understanding. And you can be so frustrated, at least I can be. I'm so impatient. with the pace of change. When are these mindsets going to change? When is the medical model going to lose its grip? When are we going to embrace the diversity that's needed in the pathways for recovery, in the approaches that are needed, in the spaces that we're creating for this healing and transformation to occur? When is it going to come? And Bruce Alexander, in his book, kind of says this quote from The Globalization of Addiction. He says, society will change at a gallop when its worldview changes, but its worldview will not change until an alternative philosophy appears, together with images, ceremonies, music, and metaphysics that can give it life in human hearts and minds. The talented people who can produce them will intuitively materialize, as others have done in previous eras of despair and confusion. We can only hope that they will appear sooner rather than later, and that we are able to recognize them when they do. And so for me, where I'm at in my research right now is that I understand that the people in recovery have been liberated from the chains of coloniality. They've been liberated from those practices and mindsets and lifestyle kind of choices that actually they've now, in order to maintain their recovery, they have practices and beliefs and rituals and ceremonies around creativity and connection and hope and generativity and so on and so forth, that they live a very different life. And yes, materially, their life may not be all sorted, but they've got something much more valuable in many respects. And what research is showing is that people in recovery 5 years plus have higher levels of well-being and quality of life as compared to the general public. And so I always find it quite strange that people in recovery are going to people in their general community almost with this metaphorical begging bowl, saying, will you accept me? Do you see me? Will you give me a seat at the table? Will you give me a chance? But we're asking people who've got lower levels of quality of life, lower levels of well-being, more dysfunctional levels of relationship than what people in recovery have got. And it really doesn't make sense. So for me, my paradigm and perspective is that people in recovery are the leaders, the liberated leaders of our society and of our kind of culture. And I hope that we can all come together in this movement to really kind of advocate for that to be the norm and the perception. So I've spoken for far too long. Thank you all so much for listening. And let's open the floor for kind of questions, comments, observations, disagreements, different perspectives. There's space for it all. So thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, David. Great. Josh is clapping. Yay. And Josh, you had a question. Thank you, David. That was brilliant.
Oh, bless you. Thank you.
Okay, go, Josh.
Dr. Patton, thanks very much for the presentation. Very, very clear. I put a comment in the chat. So much I want to talk about, but so I work in the HIV space in South Africa. It's interesting because we had a kind of stakeholder meeting the other day, and we had representation from all our key groups. We didn't have people who inject drugs. That's a group we talk about, but they weren't there. We did have the youth, like one youth. The point I'm trying to make is like these people, we people in a position of not having power, we can understand, I think, these academic models, and we can gain that power. How's it going with the people in power understanding their power? And I note that this is a one white man asking another white man this. So yes. I do want to be aware of that irony, and I'll stop there.
Yeah, it's funny. So I was recently I've spoken on a number of very large kind of platforms at big conferences. Okay, and there's been so I was recently in Canada. Let's just talk about one specific example. and there was the policy, there was Health Canada there, so the people who write the drug policies, and there was the academics and other kind of heads of their kind of change agencies, etc., people in the system, and they were all talking about stigma and the need for change, and isn't it awful, and what can we do and what can be done. And I'm thinking, well, following on from your question about the people in power, it's like, okay, we're all here, we're all in the room according to the definition of who's got the power. So if we can't do anything about it, who can? And I think what I'm trying to suggest, I think, through my work is this notion of who's got the power is misplaced. So, you'll often hear kind of speaking truth to power. Well, I think that the people in power, I'm saying that it's the people in recovery through their practices and their norms and values and lifestyle. And yes, it's going to require a sea change of understanding for this notion of power to be understood. But there are so many false notions of power. And where is the true power? And where is the change coming from? I think the change has already occurred. Like, we're asking for the government to change their policies to allow what's already occurred. The change has already happened. The recovery community has come together, healed itself, transformed itself, empowered one another, has liberated each other. What policy can create that? It's already happened. Does that make sense? I know this is kind of probably a bit too left field, and help rein me in, but
it is and it isn't. I'm still wrapping my head around it.
Sure.
Maybe other people could I'm getting there.
Good.
So I'd like to jump in if that's possible.
Yeah.
And I'd like to jump in as the guy that started the clinic. Yeah.
Mhm.
So the white Englishman that went to Africa started a clinic to help the drug addicts.
Yes.
Yeah. And I went with all my education and my thinking, which a lot of the stuff I was unconscious of. Marida, is it all right if I talk about our story? Yes? Okay.
Yes, it's fine, David.
Thank you. Okay. So, and essentially our clientele in the beginning were white Jews. Yeah. A lot, they were the people that had the money. And the culture of the clientele has changed. Yeah.
Mhm.
And what we had to do at the clinic, so what I had to do is I had to step away from the leadership role, the Mlungu being in charge, that means Whitey being in charge, and hand over the leadership to Fatima and Marida, who are two Muslim women that both had teenage pregnancies, that don't come from an academic background.
Mhm.
And the three of us really had to work together to kind of drive that transformation within the facility.
Yeah.
When people came to me and said, "What's going on? You're the boss, you're in charge," I had to defer back and say, "No, I'm not."
Mhm.
Yeah. And Fatima and Marida, when people would come to them and say, "What are you doing? We want to speak to the boss," they had to learn how to find their voice and say, "Fuck you, you're speaking to leadership now. Know your place. This is the way that we do things around here." And it's been a difficult dance for Fatima, Marida, and myself to transform over the past 4 years. Does that make? Would you agree with me, Marida?
Yes, it was difficult, David. But
Yeah.
we did
Okay.
it.
Yes, we've done it. It's fantastic. Now, I want us to think about how we expand, as we go around the world and promote our trainings and our programs, that we don't slip back into that kind of that academic
Brilliant.
colonizer thinking, because inside of me, I'm driven by a little child wound whose father was an academic professor from Oxford, and I'm hungry for affirmation from those people
Yes.
that don't even know how to change a fucking light bulb. Yeah. Yeah, so they can talk about and do the research and the Harvard referencing and the evidence shows and all that sort of stuff.
Mhm.
And we need to just bring the credibility and robustness of the work that we do to keep it safe for the marginalized communities that we're working with. Oh, I get all excited. I can feel my kokorozashis going. And yeah, so I want us to stay kind of conscious around that.
Mhm.
And there's a resistance in me that I've got to learn to dance with the colonizers in a
Mhm.
way to affect change, as opposed to going, oh, fuck the Americans and fuck the English and all that. I got to kind of build that political intelligence around that.
Yeah, and I think there's a role and space and need for all of the stakeholders, but at the moment, I'll make the percentage up. 95% of the space is dominated, as I was saying, from that white expert medical scientific perspective, and
Exactly.
hence it's in the mess that it is. And so in England, I think one of the most exciting kind of advances is around lived experience recovery organizations. So you've got people with that lived experience of addiction, of recovery, who are the founders of the organization. All or most of their staff have the lived experience, are the leaders, and the way in which those organizations run is absolutely different, culturally, organizationally, structurally, as compared to the traditional white person's medical clinical clinic. And the results are just completely off the chart. And the system keeps saying to them, oh, but can we, in essence, can we trust these people? What if they make a mistake? What if it all hits the wall and goes wrong? But actually the results in terms of healing, transformation, more people kind of progressing into advanced stages of recovery, it's all off the charts. But it's kind of the system is scared and doesn't want to give them any space. So in terms of the funding allocation, they don't get funded. They don't get funded at all. Yeah. So they're feeling very challenged at the moment. But we're writing a book around the role of lived experience recovery organizations. Yes, that'll be coming out in the summer. It's the evidence base.
Rory, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I think the frustration at the moment that I'm feeling is exactly, I think, what David was trying to say just now, is starting a clinic and trying to go about some sort of transformational change that goes about and brings in this new way of doing things. And I can hear that David, you in the UK are going through the same thing. I hear the same frustration, because you can see that there's a natural almost a transformation that would happen, but the powers that be are still not ready to listen. Am I understanding it correctly?
Yeah.
Because the complexity comes in if you actually think about it. On a day-to-day basis, what we do when we're coaching and we're meeting with individuals, and I'm bringing it down to the other side of the spectrum. David was talking at the top side, the management and all of that. What we do when we are doing the coaching on a day-to-day basis is exactly that. We're trying to look for the individual's culture.
Mm-hmm.
And get them to take their culture and link it to the culture of recovery. Often we're looking at being able to get them to become as creative as possible in their own recovery so that they can drag themselves from the culture of addiction into the culture of recovery. And we do that regardless of the powers that be.
Yes.
And the process that they're going through is regardless of the powers that be. And from what I'm hearing is when you're talking about these peer kind of experiential kind of recovery organizations, they are trying to do it with without the input, but it's the money that's the problem at the end of the day, the cash.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So my question to you, and I know I just reframed what you said, but Mike, I just wanted to make sure that I understood it correctly on myself. Do you have any solutions about how to approach that? Like here in Denmark, that's one of the things that I want to do. I just landed here fresh. I'm going to go out. I've really done quite a lot of research. I know who the people that I need to meet with and all of that. What's the type of narrative conversation that I should be having with these individuals that allows them to have the aha moment that we're looking for?
Yeah. You're not guaranteed to meet them. I mean, I think that
that's the thing.
Yeah, there are some allies in the system. So, you know, Recovery Connections in the northeast of England and also the Well in Cumbria are two lived experience recovery organizations who do receive funding from the system, you know, significant funding. But I think the challenge is, yeah, you always look for your allies. You go to the table, see if there's any like-minded people there. And I think it's around showcasing they all ask for the hard evidence, don't they? The data and the numbers and give me the evidence that this thing works. But I think it's about presenting in the snippet that I have today, the alternative forms of knowledge through the creative, through the storytelling, through the visual, through the arts, and so on and so forth, so they can grasp it and getting them to come into. I always say, whenever you come into a recovery space, you feel it. So can you invite them to the space to see it, to meet the people and to see the recovery space in action? Because there's an orbit, there's an energy, there's a transformative presence, spirit, whatever language you want to use there. There's something that is tangible, that is felt, that's embodied, and you feel. But I think also the challenge that where I'm at is that at the moment, because of the coloniality's historical grip, they're so blinkered to the model that they're looking for. The one testing is invalid. So it's how can we create alternative vessels that we present that maybe are self-sustaining. So, for example, both the Well and Recovery Connections have social enterprises. They run social businesses as a means of providing some funds to the ongoing and sustaining of the work. So they're not always reliant upon the system or the commissioner or the funder. Does that make sense? And I think that, you know, historically, if we look at where we are, we're not about to start waving the flag of revolution and you know, changing the system and the structure. We're not at that point yet, I don't think. But so I think where we need to be is about how can we create vessels whereby we can show people there's an alternative way. And I think that inviting people into them so that they experience them, are touched by them, are healed and transformed by them. And then I think that's how we can kind of, rather than having this, we're not going to do it rationally. I don't think we're going to do it over a meeting table with facts and figures.
If I could comment on what you're saying as well, just to add another complexity to it. So several of the
and after that, Rory, we'll go to Buddy.
Okay, okay, thank you. And I'll keep it short. Having gone to a couple of countries now and seen how addiction, it's almost like the people in power are suffering from bipolar disorder themselves in terms of recovery. You've got a section, and at times the same individual sitting around a table talking about, yes, we've got an entire program where we're offering needles, we're actually offering the substance and we're injecting. Yet at the same time, you've got those same individuals walking into another meeting room and they're talking about harder punishments, crack down on certain areas and all of that type of stuff. It's the same individuals having the same discussions. It's like they're insane.
Yes.
So it seems like there's a massive flux that's happening across the world, because I don't think it's only in Denmark. I get the sense that it's happening in Netherlands and all over the place, exactly the same thing.
Absolutely, it is, yeah. And it is insane, but that's the whole knowledge base is faulty. So it's created this insane kind of forms of knowledge, paradigms, perceptions, and that's why it's all falling apart. When you look at the outcomes for the citizens in our society, levels of mental health, suicide, so on and so forth, but they're still trying to kind of promote this kind of narrative that our institutions and our experts will save you. We've got the answers. Just come into our intervention, our prescription, and you'll be sorted. Or we'll protect you by punishing the bad person. Knowing levels of recidivism and harm, etc. Yeah, it's crazy. It is crazy. But they can't. The whole knowledge base and the structures are predicated upon the reproduction of itself. So they can't admit it. They can't admit it. And that's why I think it's that thing of growing new wineskins in the old system. It's got to be incremental change of growing the new things to then replace some of the old.
Rudy, do you want to come in?
Yeah, thanks, David. I'm mindful of the time, so I'll just be quick with the question. It was when you spoke about the begging bowl, it sort of had a lot of resonance for me as someone who has lived experience and in on my own recovery journey, and also using seeing the power in my own life and also in my work of recovery model, and but then also working in the medical system, having a medical hat, how whether I go between begging bowl and also rage as I see the value and the truth and the need for this a transformation to occur. And I just wondered if you had any could elaborate a little bit on the power that we actually have and how to own it, and maybe for me to let go of that internalized colonialism or structural oppression that I might have, or is it to do with awareness of the risks of taking on a system that has so-called hard power as opposed to the power that we have of people coming together and healing together and seeing the value of what we're doing. And yeah, if you just could elaborate, because that's the journey I would like to put down the begging bowl and advocate, but also do it in a way that is effective, and it doesn't make me marginalized within the work that I want to do, which is to transform.
Yeah. I think it's kind of coming back to, I guess, if you look at, it's owning your own power, isn't it? And acknowledging the riches that you have and the forms of knowledge, or the positive fruits that are there in your life right now. Because it goes back to what I was saying. If you look at the fruits and the outcomes of the culture of coloniality, that yes, you could be the multi-million-pound CEO of some big corporation, okay, living in a huge square footage kind of place with a nice postcode, a man of power, okay, lots of money in the bank account, but you never see your wife, you never see your children, you've got no friends, and your job is only as secure as you are as long as you perform. What sort of life is that, and what form of power is that? Okay, and if you come back, I would imagine that the quality of life that you have, the sense of well-being, the quality of your relationships, and it is that alternative perception and paradigm, isn't it? Because what's promoted continually is, what does success mean? What's the road to success? What's the road to happiness? And it's all about material, and it's all about consumption, owning certain things and looking a certain way and living with certain consumables, whether it's the car, the house, so on and so forth. And we know that those things don't lead to meaning and purpose. We know that those things don't lead to quality of life and so on, good mental health and quality relationships. So it's coming back to that, isn't it? And owning, actually, this is an alternative way of living. It's a radical way of living. And it sounds strange to say, I'm going to choose my mental health and my well-being. I'm going to choose my relationships, and I'm going to choose a career with meaning and purpose. All of those things are antidotes and the antithesis to what's promoted in the dominant culture. And I think from that, I come from a place of power because my life has substance. Does that make sense? I'm not sure if I'm answering your question.
Yeah, thank you.
So, Buddy, I mean, you're a highly skilled medical doctor and work with a lot of the population that have suffering from addiction in Australia. And as you try and challenge and do things better, what's the resistance that you're coming up, and how are you getting impacted? May I ask such a
Yeah, look, I
personal?
mean, I think it's something that, as I've been saying to you, because I mean, it's almost like I'm ready to leave medicine, but there is the funding there, the power that allows us to employ staff, and so my sense is what I've been trying to do is really tap into the power of the recovery work and really own it, and so I'm not going and trying to beg when I speak about the work with people who have influence and power, but I think what we have, if I was to sort of reflect on my own journey, is that having been to sort of places of real suffering and pain, it's almost like that hero's journey that that Joseph Campbell talks about, where seeing the shadows and there's a fearlessness that there's nothing to hide as much as the rest who are sort of still operating, you know, with the emperor, not calling out the emperor's nakedness. And I think that power is threatening. The fact that we don't have much to hide and we can call a spade, but so I've been trying to think, I've been reflecting on that. I think that is the power, and then it's the political and social intelligence to be sheep, but not too much of the wolf to come out and threaten too soon and make transformation that way. But I think I'm trying to unlearn the internalized sort of colonialism of feeling somehow that our work is we need to ask for a place instead of claim it, you know, equal as an equal footing to others who might be trying to promote a model. For me, that it's been about that, recognizing the power that we have, the strength of actually, I think what I'm coming against mainly is fear. That I think people at a deeper level sense that the work that we're doing, just putting band-aids on things or just writing prescriptions, is not where the power lies, you know. So I think we have the righteousness in that way, and I'm trying to claim that more in my being, so that when I speak with my colleagues, it's at least as equal, you know, the ma together, not like this. I don't know if that makes sense, David.
It does to me. And after David's responded, I'd love to hear from Janine as well, if Janine's all right with that.
Yeah, I was just thinking as well, kind of, I guess I focus more on the personal kind of power, but I was just thinking as you were talking around, I think that one of the challenges is around us creating alternative places of power. So, for example, I've just set up a publishing company called New Central Media, which is going to be a publishing space to elevate the knowledge base of people with lived experience of recovery or lived experience generally, whether that's persistence, addiction, so on and so forth. So that we're not going to the traditional publishers who are promoting the positivistic forms of knowledge production, that we've got our own publishing houses, so on and so forth. So it's a bit like, if you think to America, the civil rights movement, you know, the lack of acknowledgement of the strength and power and resiliency of Black people in all different forms of society. So they created their own alternative to the white-based Oscars. They create their own, their own kind of institutions, if you like, because in the absence of being acknowledged by the white system, it's like we're not going to not celebrate our strength and power, and we're going to create our own institutions or services, whatever it may be, that is going to be the vanguards, the focal points in the communities that will acknowledge and celebrate this knowledge base and this contribution and this strength. And I think that's, for me, strategically, one of the key things that we need to start doing is creating the alternative institutions, businesses, so on and so forth, that mark this work, that mark this community and this culture.
Thank you. Janine, would you like to come in, please?
I can come in, but I don't have anything to add. I'm sorry. And I was thinking, David, what you were saying, it's the opposite of if you can't beat them, join them. We won't join them, we will beat them, right?
Yes. But they've already lost though, because that's the problem, isn't it? And I think that's what we're starting to see. If we're looking across globally, the narrative is failing and the institutions are starting to fragment, and the whole political system, it's all starting to diminish. Historically, we're starting to see, I think, the beginnings of the demise of these historical structures, and the matrix of power is beginning to collapse and fragment. And I think strategically we've got a role to play to accelerate that process.
So just to give some context for our organization, and the kind of the business side of it and the solution that we're offering the marketplace, In the Netherlands, the problem is there's a backlog of people being able to get help for treatment, And so what we do is we go in and we provide treatment, And to do that, we're a multidisciplinary team. And the person that has the most power would be Janine, because she's gone through the academic hoops to get the title of head psychologist, yes? Yeah. So we as an organization need to bow down to her power when she says, yes, this patient is suitable for treatment or not. So in the room therapeutically, Janine will have the power because she's jumped through the hoops, and she's accountable to a professional body, Woody would have something similar, in Australia. He's got the academic hoops jumping and all of that sort of stuff. He'd be the doctor, and we'd have to bow down to that. Am I making sense here? So as an organization, as we kind of go out as, I'm going to say, lived experience organization, but for me, everyone's got lived experience. So I don't want to just like make it about, we only employ ex-crackheads, because I promise you, you're going to have a problem in your organization. There needs to be so I just want us to kind of, I'm not sure what I want, but
David, could I put it in other words, what you were just saying? What I got from what you said is what you were saying is that what we're doing as an organization is that we're using the kind of structures that exist out there, the institutional structures that exist, and for instance, in the Netherlands. And so Janine has jumped through all the hoops to be able to meet the requirements from the people in power so that we can play their game on paper, but ultimately get to the proper nitty-gritty, the bones of it, which is actually recovery and recovery culture.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say play the game though, because that just feels a bit like manipulative and unethical. We actually do understand the importance of that, but that's not be all and end all.
Yeah.
We want to take the wisdom of that and then bring it in with the wisdom of, say, the likes of me, Fatima Merida. The people that haven't got that kind of academic stuff know what it's like on the ground, and we can work together in a team to provide excellent treatment that is also affordable to the majority. God, I'm glad we recorded that. That sounded brilliant. What did I just say?
I love how you put it, David. And Janine, indeed, professionals like yourself are the best advocate for this work to penetrate through the system. So there is so much more that you offer to the community, to the industry, to the field, than your And this is what I just wanted to ask also, Dr. David Patton, the organizations that you've collaborated with in the Netherlands. If you could share that, is that confidential, or did you have any contacts here locally when you were conducting research, because it involved Netherlands as well?
The European Pathways research, that was research doing surveys.
Okay.
So we had academics from the Netherlands who did that. So who were based at the Netherlands University. Yeah, I can share their contacts if you'd like me to.
I mean, I love the work that you did, and thank you so much for the masterclass today. It was very insightful, but I also would love to see how we can, like build around it and just continue this work. So if there is a way that we can build on top of it from here locally and connect further on, that would be. That was my question. So
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm all about collaboration, so let's do it.
okay, yeah, okay. Thank you. Thanks.
All right. Well, we're coming up to past. We've been going for an hour and a half. Should we start wrapping this up, or should we go on a bit longer? I have to be off by 2:00. But personally, I'm feeling a little bit fatigued. Where's everyone else in the container?
I will also need to leave, unfortunately, in 6 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, so for me it works well to check out. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Pauline, before we check out, what would you like to say? And I'd like to appeal to that brilliant artist in you.
Creativity is always a very good point to involve with this all. I still have a question, or question is like how society can still keep people addicted as well if they know that it's like alcohol, it's a drug, and that you still can sell it all over the place. So the society is keeping people sick as well. And that's something that bothers me still, like it's an education in schools and things like that make young people also very much aware from the buttons on how what it really is actually. So education, creativity, and to combine that, but also with knowledge, a lot of more knowledge to put in the whole society, in the community, because there's so much happening still, and it's not getting better. You can say, yeah, well, you can put a line from 18 and then you can drink or whatever, but there's still happening a lot after that, so that's my thing. That's what I want to say, actually.
Thank you. Are we good to start the checkout?
Okay.
Yeah. So let's start to check out, and if there's something that you've learned or a takeaway that you'd like to throw in, go for it. If there isn't anything, then that's okay too. And the reason I'm saying that is I don't want you to sit there thinking, oh God, what have I done? What am I going to say? What am I going to say? So I'll start, yeah. I check out with a lot of pride and gratitude. Thank you, David, for coming and contributing to our community, and it's been greatly received by me. We've also managed to record it, and we can also say, yeah, well, fuck you, we've got a doctor behind us, so that's really nice as well. And excuse my humor, but yeah, I'm very grateful for you coming today. So I'll check out with Joy, and we'll go popcorn style. So when you're ready to check out, just pop.
So I'm going to check out. Oh, you said pop, David.
Hey, go Marisa and then Paul.
Wow, guys. So I'm going to check out, very grateful for this whole session. Thank you to Dr. David Patton and to David. I'm so honored to feel part of this whole journey, and also that I'm living proof of recovery. So I was really very excited towards the middle part to the end. I first didn't understand, but it all made sense in my brain, how my brain functions. So yeah, I'm very grateful. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Marita. Paula?
Yes, I'm checking out, also being very much honored and grateful. I love this rebelly kind of feeling in the container as well. It was very insightful, and I enjoyed and I learned a lot as well. And I'm just hopeful we can bring this forward and louder and make more impact. And there's a lot of little points that I also made here on my notes. So yeah, thank you. I'm checking out with joy.
Yeah, I'll check up next. So one of the key things that I'd like to thank you for is just the stark reminder that we live in a fascinatingly complex world, and that the role that we fulfill in being able to create this creative experience for the individuals that we work with, that it actually adds value, and it can influence a community. Yes. So those are some of the things that I took away. So thank you for that. And I'm checking out fascinated. So thank you.
Thank you, Rory.
Josh, checking out with deep love for everyone here. Very grateful to try to follow along with aspects of this, some of which I was very familiar with, and some of which I was not very familiar with. So, yeah, just very grateful. Very, very distracted by what's happening in my personal and professional life, but I'm so glad to see the work that's happening here. And with that, I check out.
Okay. Josh.
Janine, also checking out with respect and love and goosebumps for the work. And I loved hearing how non-linear and non-dualistic style is so much more healing than the top-down linear way. It's a confirmation of the work that I also do in the mental health field. So there's a parallel that's there. And so with a lot of love, and also very grateful to be part of this group.
So there's a showdown between David, Pauline, and Massimo. Oh, here comes Massimo.
Yeah, I thank you so much, Dr. Patton. It was very interesting, especially with all that is happening in South Africa, of the work of decolonialization here in South Africa. So this was another added element and a different name as well for something that is very deep. I loved it, and I was a bit all over the place. I didn't expect to have this presentation, now. I thought there was the time for our case management. So apologies that between the kitchen and here and there, it's been a very busy day. So I'm checking out very informed and very joyful, and I'm glad that I was here. Thank you so much for all the work.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Massimo. The case management training kicks off next Friday. Cool. Pauline, David, who's it going to be?
Okay, I'm checking out, very grateful, very interesting. Thinking about a lot of things, looking at from my own perspective about creativity, what I can do with it. And I think there's a lot that can change in society as well. And maybe I can do a part of it. I don't know yet how exactly, but I'm going to do in March, do a lot of things with refugee work also, so that's my service to society. And maybe there's also part of me to bring that in there about this, because there's people also with a lot of traumas and PTSS, and so that's I don't know. I can do something with it maybe. So thank you very much for that I can join this. It's always interesting, and yeah, thank you.
Cool. And just before you go, David, I just want to thank everyone where English isn't their first language for coming. But that's just want to, yeah, I just want to acknowledge that kind of privilege that not everyone has. So thank you, everyone. David, back to you.
And also, especially given I'm from the northeast of England originally, so we talk very fast. So well done, bearing with me. Yeah, I'm checking out with gratitude, just thankful for everybody's time and engagement, but also just that sense you could feel the listening in the room, and that really came out through your questions and your observations, and just as you were checking out what you were resonating with and what that was stirring in you. So I'm really grateful for that level of engagement. But I'm also checking out with a sense of curiosity, because also I kind of learn from your reflections, observations, and questions. And so I'm leaving feeling challenged to make some of what I'm talking about even more tangible in terms of around the power questions and translating what does that mean in practice? How do we move it forward? So that's really a good place I feel that I'm leaving from. So thank you so much. And I'm really happy that the sun is shining in England. As you can see, the reflection of the sun from my window. So that's amazing.
Nothing
Go, Paula. Go.
No, I just one last thing. I wanted to ask, is it possible to have the link for that interactive board?
Yes, I will send it. Shall I email it to you, David, or how shall I share?
Just type it in the chat now, if possible.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And I'll do the pathways to recovery. So if anybody wants to get involved with the photograph kind of project, it would be great. It's not a commitment. You can just ask a question. Let me pop that in the chat now.
And why David's doing that? David is also assisting us with the cricket essay intervention in the research side of things, creating the questionnaires and getting the information back of what's working, what's not working, and also what we're doing at Recovery Connections. David is a trustee at Recovery Connections, and that's what's the word I want to use? That's a very important relationship that we're very grateful to be having. And so, yeah, and I'd like our organization to be kind of the way we do things around here, be kind of acknowledged in some way.
Wonderful.
So Paula is the CEO, yeah, of Mahuni, yeah. And I know you always cringe inside when I say that. You go, oh no, I'm not the. What do you think our next step should be?
Well, give more power to those that actually lead, and that's people in recovery. That's my takeaway from
yes
as well. So
Sorry.
people on the floor, like we all are actually. So the next step, David, I think we've just have to recapture now. I have to recapture now. I don't really know. I'm very much intrigued by today's lecture, and I would love to put this footprint also here in the Netherlands, and just continue the work that you have started and established with your research and contributions already, David. David Patton and David Collins and Morita. And there's so much to build on and to be louder. That was my resolution, just to be louder about the work. And I believe there is many of us who can keep on rolling the ball onwards. And those that can will come around.
Yes. Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
David, it's not pasting. I don't know why, so I'm gonna have to share it by your email. I don't know why it's not pasting, but it isn't. I've tried lots.
Oh. All right. Stick it in a WhatsApp and I'll send it to everyone.
Thank you. Great. I gotta go, guys. I lots of love. I have to check out.
Bye, Paola. Bye. David, if you've got a couple minutes still?
Yes, of course. Yeah. Thank
All
you so
right,
much,
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Janine. Thank you.
Thank you, Janine.